The story starts in a hospital where our MC is playing games, but he is bored of every game. Then he finds a game called Dungeon and Stone on a forum. It's a 2D pixelated game, which he doesn't usually play, but since it's free and he's bored, he decides to give it a try. It's a rogue-type game where if you die, you have to start over from the beginning. Without noticing, he plays it for hours and becomes addicted. He plays it everywhere he goes for 9 years. Finally, after 9 years, he reaches the final boss room. After opening it, he receives a notification that the tutorial is complete. Suddenly, a light emanates from the screen, and he is sucked into the game world. He opens his eyes and finds himself as a barbarian, standing in the coming-of-age ceremony where barbarians choose their first weapon before entering the dungeon. He is shocked and wonders what is happening. Suddenly, a barbarian near him shouts, "It's the game! It's Dungeon and Stone!" After hearing that, the barbarian chief arrives and asks who shouted. The MC points towards the player in fear. The chief approaches the player and chopped his head off and announces that he was possessed by an evil spirit. Realizing that if he stands out, he will die, the MC faces a problem. He doesn't know his name. If he doesn't go when called, he will die. He starts to think of an idea and comes up with a plan. If someone else doesn't respond within 2 seconds, he will act. After some time, a name is called and no one responds. So he goes up on the stage and luckily he gets it right. It was his name. Finally, he discovers his name is Andel's son, Bjorn. With his years of experience playing the game, he chooses a shield as his first weapon because it offers the most survivability. After everyone chooses their weapons, they select their leader, Venom's third son, to guide them towards the dungeon. Because everyone that have gone through coming-of-age ceremony will enter the dungeon. However, after some time they get lost on their way. They decide to choose another leader, Feneline's second daughter Aner, but even she gets lost. Seeing their intelligence, the MC decided to help them and suggests her that they should follow other species to reach the dungeon gate. Aner likes his idea, and they start following other creatures until they finally reach the dungeon gate. However, upon reaching the gate, the MC starts feeling fear. But he have no choice but to go inside because all the citizens of the city need to pay taxes starting from the age of 20, and failure to do so results in execution. Since he is a barbarian, it is impossible for him to find a normal job, and the labyrinth only opens once a month. So he has to go now, but his feet aren't moving because of fear. Then Aner gives him some encouragement, and also thanks him for helping earlier. After that, he gathers his composure and enters the labyrinth. However, instead of transported to the start area, he is transported to an area with complete darkness. Just as he took a few steps, a trap set by a cunning goblin snapped shut beneath his feet. Pain coursed through his body as he began to bleed profusely. The goblin, reveling in its victory, shadowed Bjorn's every move, eagerly awaiting his impending demise. Aware of the goblin's presence, Bjorn feigned weakness and collapsed to the ground, his breathing shallow. Seizing the opportunity, the goblin threw a rock at him, testing to see if he was truly dead. Confirming his suspicion, the goblin approached Bjorn. But Bjorn, despite his injuries, mustered his strength and launched a surprise attack. In a fierce struggle, he emerged victorious, and the goblin's body disappeared. Leaving behind a 9th grade magic stone, a highly coveted and valuable item in this world. Yet, its worth was equaled that of a mere piece of bread. Despite his victory, Bjorn's wounds continued to bleed profusely, posing a grave threat to his survival. Desperate for aid, he forced himself to keep moving, dragging his injured body across the unforgiving ground. Hour after grueling hour, he fought against the encroaching darkness, his resolve unwavering. The brink of death loomed near, but he refused to succumb. Finally, a glimmer of light pierced the darkness, signifying an exit from the treacherous depths. To his astonishment, a party of seasoned adventurers emerged before him. Seeing his dire condition, they stopped, their captain demanding the assistance of their healer. However, much to their dismay, the healer refused, unwilling to use her limited holy power on a stranger. Undeterred, the captain turned to another party member, asking him to give a healing potion. Reluctant due to its cost, the party member initially refused, but the captain, demonstrating his leadership, promised to repay the debt in due time. Relenting, the party member handed over the potion, and with careful precision, poured it onto Bjorn's injured leg. Unbeknownst to many, potions in this world inflicted a searing pain when used, making them impractical for use in the midst of battle. The healing process was arduous, but Bjorn endured the agony, his wounds slowly closing under the potion's influence. Grateful for their aid, the captain inquired how he had arrived before him. He wondered if there was a hidden shortcut he had missed. Bjorn, tell them what happened, after listening his explanation. The captain explained that such occurrences were exceptionally rare, happening only once or twice every 100 years. Bjorn couldn't help but reflect on his ill-fated luck. With their paths diverging, the party bid him farewell, and Bjorn resumed his exploration of the illuminated area. With a renewed sense of purpose, Bjorn ventured forth, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger or opportunity. He knew that the light before him marked the beginning of a new chapter, brimming with challenges and untold treasures. Armed with his resilience, honed skills, Bjorn prepared to face whatever awaited him in this enigmatic realm. Little did he know that his journey had only just begun, and the trials ahead would test him in ways he could never have imagined.
After his near-death experience, he kept running into goblins. They keep coming. At first he was nervous, but after some time, goblins are no threat to him, and traps are randomly placed in the open. The only problems were food and water, because the food he got from the deputy chief was lost when he was crawling on the ground. Only 2 days' worth is left, and the chief did not give any water, so he has to find it in the labyrinth. So he starts searching, and after some time, he finds the water, but there was already someone else there, but he left himself. After that, he drinks water and started counting the magic stones he collected, and there were 44 stones, and now he started to feel tired and started to feel sleepy. There are 2 ways to sleep in the labyrinth. First, live your life in the god's hands and sleep, or second, find allies to protect each other. He tried the second option, but everyone got scared because of his looks and all the blood all over his body. Then suddenly, the man from before comes and asked him if he is looking for an overnight companion. After hearing that, MC got angry. Then he explained that he thought that they could take some sleep while protecting each other. Then MC understands that it was called an overnight companion, and he thought he was saying After that, he agrees, and they play rock, paper, scissors to determine who will sleep first, and MC lost. So the man gives MC a watch and asks him to wake him up after 2 hours. After 2 hours, MC wakes him up, and now it's his turn to sleep, but he can't believe in a stranger. So he pretends to sleep to see if that man does something, but he doesn't do anything. After 2 hours, they change turns again, but MC is frustrated because he didn't get a single minute of sleep, and he was so sleepy that his eyes closed, and MC falls asleep. Then suddenly, that man wakes him up. MC apologizes to him and offers him more time to sleep, but that man refuses. So MC takes his turn and starts sleeping. After some time, that man comes and attacks him with his hammer, but MC blocks it and says he knew that there is no one that kind in this world who forgives and does not take the offer to sleep. They fight, and MC defeats him, asking him why he didn't attack the first time he slept. That man answers that because he also needs sleep. Then MC asks why he attacked him, and the man answers that it's because of his stone, but MC doesn't believe him and attacks him again, asking once more. That man explains that it's because of his heart, and tells him that a barbarian's heart is used for new magical research and sold for a good price. After saying all of that, he starts begging to be let go. Everyone in this world thinks barbarians are stupid and naive. Most of it is true, but our MC is a human inside a barbarian. So he kills him and takes his items. He have many items, like potions. MC starts to think that after only a few hours since he came to this world, he killed someone, and only after killing a man, he is now living like a man. After that, he started to hunt again, and goblins started to come in pairs because it's the second day. But it's not a big problem for our MC. He hunts for 14 hours, but now he started to feel very tired and needs sleep. Because of the previous incident, this time he chose the first option and tried to sleep alone, hoping goblins won't come, but goblins keep coming. After some time he just closed his eyes, but a goblin attacked him and just missed MC's neck because of height. After that, MC becomes frustrated and decided to find another barbarian, but instead, He meets many humans this time who want to become his overnight companion, maybe because this time he is looking good and didn't cover in blood. But he refused them all and told them that he is looking for another barbarian. Then one man tells him that it's going to be hard to find because most of the barbarians quickly go up to the second floor. Then MC realizes that it would be embarrassing for someone of their build to struggle on the first floor. So he starts to look for any race other than human to become an overnight companion, because every race has a special trait other than human. After some time of searching, he finds an elf. She was injured and afraid. Then MC goes there, and she instantly starts to beg him to let her live. Then MC tries to comfort her, but she gets more scared and says that even if he is a barbarian, let her live just once because she has a younger brother to take care of. Then MC starts to think about what barbarians do. So to make her let her guard down against him a little, he gives her some healing herbs and some bandages he got from the men from before, and asks her to treat her wound first while he stands guard. After she finishes treatment, he introduces himself, and she also tells her name, Erwin. Then he asks her why she is so afraid of him. She tells him that he is a barbarian, and barbarians and elves had a very big war in the past, and now they are hostile towards each other. She says she doesn't care about this, and asks him to let her go. MC didn't know about it. All he knows is that elves and barbarians have a good relationship, so he does not know which timeline this is compared to the game he plays. Then he tells her that he also doesn't care about it, and asks her to become his overnight companion. I know it sounds weird. After thinking for some time, she agrees, but asks him to make an oath on his warrior's honor that he will not harm her, and she also makes an oath in the name of her tribe. Then both make the oath to not harm each other. Then our MC decides to sleep first, and she agrees. So he gives her the pocket watch and asks her to handle it with care because it's expensive. At first he thought that he would pretend to sleep for 10 minutes, but he instantly falls asleep. Then after 2 hours she wakes him. Then he realizes that it's all because of the blanket and the bag, and if Hans, the man from before, lent it to him, he would definitely die there. So he decides to lend them to her, and just like that, they both take a few turns, and now there are only 10 minutes left before the last turn.
Then 2 men came there and asked Bjorn what his relationship with the elf was. He told them they were overnight companions. Then they asked how much time was remaining. After hearing that, Bjorn told them it was none of their business and that he was not obligated to tell them. He scared them away, and they left. After that, Bjorn tried to wake up Erwin, but she pretended to sleep. Bjorn forcefully woke her and asked why she was pretending to sleep. She answered that if she got up, he would leave her because their partnership would end as soon as she woke up, and he would leave her alone. Then Bjorn asked her what happened with those 2. She answered that she didn't know them, but they were probably from the same group called the Crystal Union as the human who tried to hurt her. After hearing that it was a whole group, he first thought of parting ways. But this beautiful elf was only 20 years old, and that was reason enough for a man of culture to help someone. So he decided to help her and asked for her full story before deciding. She got really happy and told him that she had met them on the first day inside the labyrinth as overnight companions. And when she was sleeping, she felt a gaze behind her. Only later did she find out that he was a manager of a clan doing business on the first floor, and somehow she managed to escape. Since then, they had been chasing her. Then Bjorn asked how they were able to chase her in the labyrinth. She told him that they were probably using message stones, which allow communication when synchronized prior to usage. Their range is up to about 300 meters. It was a device that didn't exist in the game, so he was a little shocked. Then Bjorn asked her why the members of the Union continued to chase her, when it didn't seem like she had done anything wrong. She told him that while escaping, she swung her knife around and accidentally cracked one of the assailant's ears. Bjorn felt bad for that man, and she was laughing while telling him all this. Suddenly, she felt someone following them from behind, about 150 meters away. It was an ability of elves they are born with, so they decided to increase their speed, but the distance between them didn't increase. Bjorn started to think about the risks he was taking and the benefits. Well, I think we all know the benefits of helping beautiful elf. So he asked her what she was good at. She gave a great answer fitting for the situation. She said that she was good at laundry and cleaning but bad at cooking. I just want to ask what is going on in her head at a moment like this. Everyone, what do you think? But just don't go overboard with it. Then he asked what she was good at during battle, that she was good at archery, and could also use spirit magic, specifically flame element. Flame element is actually the rarest element in this world. Then he asked her if she had killed anyone before. She answered that she hadn't, but she could do it. Then Bjorn asked seriously if she would like to become his comrade until they got out of the labyrinth. He would take 90s, and she would get 10. He didn't even finish his speech, but she instantly agreed without any hesitation. So Bjorn decided to get rid of the pursuer because the distance between them was getting shorter and shorter. He decided to enter a dark area where they waited for the pursuer. After he arrived and started searching for them. Bjorn ordered her to shoot the arrow. She was a little nervous, but she shot the arrow and got a headshot. MC sure was smart. He didn't kill the man himself. Erwin was in a little shock, so he gave her some encouragement and started looting the men. There, he found the message stone Erwin had been talking about. After that, Bjorn checked the loot he got from the man he just killed. He had a pouch of magic crystals, 2 daggers, 1 potion bottle from his waist belt, and the clothes he was wearing, a leather top and bottom. Bjorn sure was a scavenger, and I like this kind of Bjorn story. Then MC asked Erwin about how to use the message stone, and she told him that there was a button on the side. After Bjorn pressed it, a voice came from it, and there was someone giving everyone instructions and asking them to catch the elf and the barbarian with full instructions. He also placed a 10,000 gold bounty on their heads and asked everyone to gather at the Goblin District, which was where Bjorn and Erwin were currently. After hearing that, Erwin got scared, but MC asked her not to be scared, and they moved up to the 2nd floor. After hearing that, she asked if they were really going to the 2nd floor by themselves, as there was a huge difference between the 1st and 2nd floors. Bjorn said he knew it and told her that they would just stay near the entrance, and they were also a good match. She got flustered after hearing that, but she still hesitated to go to the 2nd floor. Then, suddenly, a voice came from the message stone, saying that whoever found the elf first could enjoy her first on top of the 10,000 gold. Then another man's voice came, saying that if she was too resistant, could he cut off one of her arms and legs. Then that man asked if they should just leave the important part, and he asked if they all knew what he meant, right? After hearing all of that, she immediately agreed to go up to the 2nd floor. This makes Bjorn's work easy and saves his time. He always likes to help people in need when it is beneficial to him, of course. When a chance like this comes, of course, he will take it. After that, Erwin asks Mick about the path to the 2nd floor. Bjorn said that he doesn't know the specific path, but the dungeon is designed in such a way that if you keep following the darkness, you will reach a portal, since the darkness represents a path that leads you to the upper floors. Suddenly, Erwin stops Bjorn because there was a trap. After seeing the trap, Bjorn remembers the dark past and that he just walked a few steps before stepping on one, but they only appeared now after so late. Then he realizes how unlucky he was. Then Erwin asks Bjorn to let her handle it and he should rest. Then Bjorn told her not to use spirit to save strength. With her clumsy look, you can understand what she is going to do. After that, she goes near the trap and suddenly 2 goblins attack her, but she was ready and counter. Attacks them and kills the first goblin. Then the second goblin. Then the second goblin tries to attack her, but she quickly finishes him too. After that, she gives both stones to Bjorn according to the agreement of 9-1, and she seems very happy about it, saying there's something her younger sibling has been asking for. And if they keep progressing like this, she can earn a little bit too, right? After hearing that, Mick feels like she is trying to insult him. I also feel the same. But she's got a point there. Then a voice from the stone comes again, saying that they are raising the bounty on the elf to 20,000 gold dead or alive. After hearing that, Erwin gets scared again. Then Bjorn asks her not to worry and says there's no one who will search in the dark for them. And these bastards don't have the best teamwork. That's all he said to her. But inside his mind, he was thinking that it's suspicious, that all things are going too well. He was just thinking, but suddenly, Erwin shouts, "There are ghouls." After seeing them, Bjorn starts to think, how are the ghouls here? On the first floor, there are different monsters based on the direction you go, and ghouls are supposed to be in the south. They've come too far after roaming for so long, but actually, it's a good thing for Bjorn. Maybe you guys are thinking about what level Ma currently is, right? To know that first, I'll explain the experience awarding system for the dungeon in stone. You are only awarded for the first time you defeat a monster of the same species. But if they are from a different rank, you can also gain experience. For example, if you kill a goblin and a goblin chief, they are both considered different species, and you gain experience from both of them the first time you kill them. Meaning you need to defeat as many species as possible in order to level up, so Mick is just level 1. And by the way, a personal question, I'm also thinking of making a similar game, but in 3D, of course. So can you guys tell me which platform I should create it on? The mobile version will have lighter graphics compared to the CC version. Also, tell me all your ideas about gameplay and everything else. And if you guys want, I can make another channel where I'll share my progress on it. Now, let's get back to the story. Erwin said she will handle it alone, but denied it, asking her to cover from behind. After Bjorn comes within a certain range of ghouls, they attack him. And why is their hair like melting cream on top of a cake? Well then, the fight begins. And it was a piece of cake with Bjorn's power and Erwin's artillery. After that, they keep walking towards the north until the 3rd day. Then Erwin sees blood on the ground, and it was not Goblin's blood. After following the blood trail for some time, they find a sandal. And I think everyone knows about the dark past of Mech. After seeing that, the portal was less than 10 meters away from his starting point, and if only he had gone in the other direction. Just how much bad luck does he have? Because anyone who opens the portal first to the 2nd floor gets 2 experience points. And as I told you before, you can only earn experience points 1 time from the same species, so it's very hard to level up. But you can earn these experience points every time the labyrinth opens, and it becomes a kind of race. That's why the team who saved Bjorn on the first day asked him about it. Thinking about that makes him very angry, and seeing him like that, Erwin asks him if there's something she did wrong. Then he says it was not because of her. After that, she comes to a conclusion that Bjorn lost his barbarian comrade here, so she gives him some sympathy. Bjorn gets confused, but he decides to ignore it, and they go up to the 2nd floor, the Goblin Forest. But their landing is not a smooth one, for Bjorn, of course. Erwin lands perfectly. After Bjorn recovers from this unfortunate experience, they look around, and there is no living being in a 50-meter radius. The 2nd floor is different from the 1st floor. While the 1st floor is like an underground maze, the 2nd floor is an open forest, and there are 4 gates in 4 different directions on the 1st floor, and each gate leads to a different place. But you can go to the 3rd floor from any of them. Just tell me, what's with the ghouls? Others look good, but ghouls look like ice cream is melting on their heads. After that, Erwin asks Bjorn what to do now. He tells her that once the time is up, which is 168 hours for the 1st floor and 240 hours for the 2nd floor, the labyrinth spits the explorers back out into the city. So they will stay on the 2nd floor before the 168 hours are up, and then they go back to the 1st floor. But they can't just stay here by the portal all day, so they start to explore the nearby area a bit. Soon after some time, Erwin finds a trap, but Bjorn didn't see it. Then Erwin throws a rock at it to deactivate it, and then she asks for praise from Bjorn. But Bjorn just says that she is good at throwing rocks, and it was always her duty to find the traps. McSure is a Sigma. Let's talk about the 2nd floor a little. Traps on the second floor are different than the first floor. They are well hidden and are all over the floor, but there is no goblin watching over them. And other than traps, another difference is that the goblins go around in groups of about a dozen, sometimes with warriors or archers. And there are more high-ranking monsters the farther you go towards the exterior of the forest. Continue the story. Bjorn and Erwin started exploring the goblin forest, destroying traps in their way so they wouldn't cause any trouble later when monsters attack. Soon, Erwin heard footsteps of the goblins and asked Bjorn what to do. Bjorn asked her about the number of goblins, and she answered that she doesn't know the exact number, but it's more than 10 for sure. After hearing that, he decided that they will attack them and asked Erwin how close they can get without being noticed. She answered that on her own, she can get to about 30 meters away from them. Then, Bjorn said that they will go with her plan. First, Erwin goes near them and shoots the first arrow. Then Bjorn will attack them. However, the second floor is different. There are 3 times the amount of goblins from the first floor. And there's a goblin warrior too. Yes, this guy with the knife-like sword is a goblin warrior. And it should be scary face so many goblins to gather. But instead of being scared, Bjorn's warrior's heart was twitching. He was feeling excited. It reminds me of the Overlord manga where Ainz's emotions automatically get suppressed. With this sense of excitement, he started to crush them one by one, but dealing with the goblin warrior isn't easy. He almost chopped Bjorn's head off and surrounded him with other goblins. The situation became quite threatening, and he might also get injured, but that's if he was alone, of course. But with a trusted partner like Erwin, his back is covered, and he quickly finished them all. He gained 1 experience point for defeating the goblin warrior for the first time, and 11 magic crystals. But the warrior's weapon and armor disappeared with the goblin. The warrior stone has more value than a normal goblin of the same rank. So he decided to give Erwin 2 normal stones. She looked very happy. And after that, they started moving again. Once they went farther out than a 3-kilometer radius, they began to come across goblin groups every 5 minutes. This time, there's an archer among the goblins, and as soon as he saw them, he disappeared using stealth magic. It became difficult because of the goblin archers. But it wasn't enough to defeat Bjorn. He just had to focus a little more to dodge the arrows coming towards him, and he easily defeated the goblin archer. After 15 hours of fights, they decided to take rest. And Bjorn gave Erwin the first chance to sleep, and she instantly fell asleep. Then Bjorn started thinking that explorers are scarier than the goblins, especially now that he has a reason to be worried, and it's a problem that she's so pretty. He said it out loud, and Erwin woke up instantly and asked him if she is really pretty. But Bjorn asked her to sleep. Well, it shows that she was not stupid and is always on her guard. And just like that, the 4th, 5th, and 6th day passed, and it became the 7th day, the last day, and it's finally time to leave the labyrinth. Bjorn told Erwin that it was finally time to leave the labyrinth. There were only 2 hours and 47 minutes until the first floor would spit the explorers back out. Erwin told Bjorn that she's so tired that she will immediately fall asleep as soon as they're out. Bjorn told her that they should go back now because they should get to the portal earlier rather than late. Of course, things would get a bit tricky now, because the goblin groups had respawned and put down new traps all over the place. Erwin also sensed a goblin group 70 meters away from them with 8 regular goblins, 2 archers, and 2 warriors. Bjorn decided that they will fight. Goblins were just chatting and laughing. And just like before, Erwin shot from afar and popped one of them in the skull, leaving the other goblins stunned. Then Bjorn charged in with his fierce look, scaring the goblins, and he started his attack. He knew that Erwin would take care of the archers, so he focused on killing the warriors first. Bjorn had become a master at fighting goblins, swinging his hammer around and hitting them all to their death in each shot. Erwin also got used to it. She knew exactly when and who to shoot, and because of that, the time it took to kill all the goblins had shortened. He praised her and told her that she did a good job, and she loved having Bjorn's approval. But he told her to tell him when she kills the archers so that he doesn't have to worry about getting shot while fighting. She apologizes and tells him she wasn't sure if the last one was hit or not. He is a bit confused, but agrees that unconfirmed information would be more dangerous. While Erwin just smiled and waited for a response, he was thinking about how much he's grown. He's actually kind of proud, but I doesn't know who he is proud of. To me, it looks more like self-appreciation. Suddenly, Erwin calls Bjorn's attention to something cool near a dead goblin. Its corpse hasn't fully vanished yet. Rather, it has a blue aura around it. Bjorn notes that this essence particularly belongs to the goblin archer. Essences are a part of the skill system in Dungeon and Stone, which gives you passive and active skills with varying stats, depending on the essence's type. There is only one essence allowed per level, but it is kind of like a cheat. It's one of the most valuable treasures for an explorer, and there will always be a limit to how many essences you can absorb. He remembers his early days of playing the game and recalls how each goblin has a different ability attached to their essence, and your fate will depend on which essences you take. It has a near 0% drop rate, and he never expected to see it here. He was speechless as they stood near it. It feels too good to be true, and he senses something bad might happen. Then our weird but cute Erwin asks him if she would become a goblin if she ate it. Bjorn tells her that she wouldn't, but she would earn a part of the goblin archer's abilities. He tells her how the guy who was chasing them on the first floor had taken a razor mane wolf's essence, which gave him the ability to track their smell. He asks her if she wants the essence, and she says she doesn't really care much, but she will take it if Bjorn doesn't want to take it. Bjorn doesn't care about the goblin archer's essence. He's a barbarian, and he already knows what essence he wants, and this essence would be useless to him. So he tells Erwin that she can have it, but she must promise him something. This is something he was originally going to tell her once they got to the first floor. But right as he was about to speak, they were interrupted by a man calling out to them. It's a group of explorers. He tells our protagonist not to move a muscle. Erwin asks him what he means and mentions that they were just hunting, but Bjorn knew the true purpose of these people arriving. He puts his hands on Erwin's shoulders and says she doesn't need to answer them. Erwin looks confused for a moment. Right then, Bjorn throws her into the goblin archer's essence, and she lands directly on top of the essence, and a bright light emerges from the essence, covering her. The man, who looks like he's from Naruto anime, starts screaming out of rage because Erwin ate the essence and is now fusing with it. He claims that the essence belonged to them. Erwin stands up and leans her back against Bjorn, thanking him for the essence. Bjorn knew that he would eventually run into people like these. People who wait until they see an opportunity to grab something from unsuspecting explorers. However, they couldn't do anything about it now that Erwin had absorbed it, and it was gone forever. Bjorn took a step forward and told them to come at them if they wanted a fight. He was confident, showing no fear as he looked towards them. He knew they were at a numerical disadvantage, so they needed to show confidence and boldness. That group started getting nervous, looking at the oversized barbarian with his hammer in his hand. He sure was intimidating. He told them he was ready for a fight if they wanted one, but if they were scared, they could back off. It looks like we are going to see some real fight very soon. But for now, we have to wait because that group decided to go from there. But before they left with a warning to Bjorn that they will come. After that, Bjorn and Erwin start running towards the portal, and Bjorn tells Erwin not to stop until she reaches the portal. She runs at the fastest speed she can while asking Bjorn if the 4 from earlier are gone, or whether they'd chase them. Bjorn remembers how they threatened him that he would get revenge for the essence, and even if they didn't follow them, they would probably end up in the same place, which confuses Erwin. Bjorn tells her that they were a party of 4, which is a good number for a second-floor raid. But they were loitering around the entrance, which means they were planning to go back to the first floor and leave the labyrinth, just like them. They were doing the same thing as them, and Erwin appreciates Bjorn's ability to think critically. Well, for others, he is a barbarian after all. As they run, Erwin senses a group of goblins 50 meters away from their location, and Bjorn says that they will avoid them. However, Erwin tells Bjorn that they can't run because the goblins are coming towards them. Bjorn is shocked to hear this, because the goblins hadn't found them once during the past few days. So how did they find them now? He wondered if this was a coincidence. So they decided to go in the opposite direction. As Bjorn made a quick turn, Erwin was agreeing with him, but suddenly an arrow comes flying towards her. Bjorn grabbed her by the shirt and pulled her backward, but the arrow wasn't from a goblin archer. She says she was going to dodge it herself, and Bjorn says that it's the guys from earlier who shot at them. He tells Erwin that they lured the goblins to their location, and they're waiting on the opposite side. They were planning to tire them out with goblins, and now they had no choice but to fight. He told Erwin to use her powers. She is confused as to what powers he means, and he tells her to use the essence's power that she had acquired by eating the goblin archer's essence. You see, every essence has its own special ability, and since Erwin had absorbed the goblin archer's essence, it would give her special powers. It would increase Erwin's stats in many ways, as you can see on the stat window. Alongside that, it adds a passive and active skill, which can be quite useful in situations like this. She had gotten a passive skill that made all her arrows poisonous, while also giving her an active skill that made her stealthy. Erwin tells him that she doesn't know how to use it, and he just looks at her and tells her that it's already working. Erwin begins to glow blue with the essence surging through her body. She can finally feel the powers of the goblin archer. Her active skill thief step was now in use. Bjorn looked at her and wondered whether the skills work just by willing them, or did they need to say something to trigger it. Meanwhile, Erwin is just enthralled by her new powers. He hands her his bag, telling her to keep it safe. He was going to handle the goblins on his own, and she can look for the guy with the crossbow. Erwin is worried for Bjorn because it would be too dangerous on his own. However, he doesn't care at the moment. He tells her that there is no time to think. He tells her to stay hidden, and when he gives the signal, she must kill the guy with the crossbow. There would only be one shot. After that, he runs into the forest towards the goblins without even telling her what the signal would be. After some time, he stops, because goblins were surrounding him from the left while rushing into the goblins headfirst. Bjorn notices how those guys haven't shown themselves since they shot at them with a crossbow. Early on, he assumed that they would show themselves once he killed all of the goblins, and he began the killing spree. Blood splatters were everywhere as Bjorn was killing the group of goblins. There were a dozen of them. 2 of the goblins were swordsmen or warriors, but there were no arrows flying towards him. There were probably no archers, or so he thought. But an arrow comes flying his way, so he blocked it with his shield, and he now knows there were archers too. Then he felt something pierce his back. It was a goblin with a dagger who stabbed him from behind. He threw the goblin off and bashed its head in with his shield. He was fighting the goblins to the best of his abilities. But he also remembered the crossbow guy was there too, and he didn't have Erwin to help him this time. The injuries were piling up as they were cutting Bjorn up. It was looking like the attack on Titans. But he didn't let up though, as he slammed his hammer onto the goblins and killed them all. They turned into smoke, and he realized that things were getting a bit too dangerous for him. Suddenly, 2 arrows shot in his direction at once. He had to dodge them, but he realized that they were both different markings. One belonged to a goblin archer, and the other arrow was from the crossbow guy. It was impossible to block both arrows, and now he had to pick and choose which arrow would be more dangerous to get hit with. So he decided to block the crossbow bolt, and as he blocked it, the goblin arrow had pierced through his elbow because he simply couldn't have blocked shots from both sides. His arm was wounded and bleeding, not to mention the goblin arrows seemed to have been poisoned. His arm was turning purple, and he couldn't feel any movement within it. He only had his right arm, and he needed to choose between his weapons now. So he let go of the hammer, knowing it wouldn't be much help. He pulled the arrow out of his elbow and chose the shield. It was his original weapon. He knew that the real enemy was that group of scums. If it weren't for them, the goblins wouldn't have been much of a threat to him. He could easily kill goblins with the hammer, but the shield was necessary to protect himself from those crossbow bolts. Bjorn kept slamming into them with his shield. He was flinging them around like they were nothing, sending them flying far away with each hit. But it was not enough. Eventually, he had enough, and he got angry. As he gave the goblins an angry look, the remaining goblins began to run away. As they ran away, Bjorn had one slight moment of rest. He managed to hold on long enough, and he knew he didn't have to chase them down. The group started to emerge from the bushes. They were hiding in there for too long. Their leader smiled and looked smug. He respected Bjorn for getting rid of all of those goblins on his own. He found it impressive and quite unexpected as he walked out with his two other companions. The crossbow guy didn't come with them, but he noticed and asked him the whereabouts of Erwin. With anger, he just tells them to come and fight him. Then their leader says that it is truly impressive that he still has energy despite fighting all of those goblins. However, he was sure that Bjorn was severely injured by this point and gives him the option to tell him where Erwin is, and they would let him go. Bjorn smiles. He wondered if they thought he was stupid, but Bjorn, laughing, annoyed them, and they decided that they should fight him first and torture him later for the answers. He tells his crew not to let their guard down, even if Bjorn is injured. They were going to take this fight the same way as they would while hunting a giant monster. They decided to rush and attack Bjorn as he held his shield up, ready for their attack. But his situation was dire. His left arm wasn't moving, and he was going up against 3 explorers. He wondered whether Erwin found the crossbow archer yet, but he needed to send the signal now. But he knew that the signal had to be something unique, something that this world's people would recognize. He knew what he had to do. He smiled as he raised his poisoned arm up and showed them his middle finger. As he put his arm up, he looked very pleased with the signal. Well, it's a good one. What do you think will happen if Erwin got confused with it? As all of you know how clumsy she is. I also have a story, a dark fantasy one. So I just want to know how much darker I keep it. It is going to be similar to Remonster. But if I make it too much darker, I have to create another channel for it, or I release a novel with a darker version and video with a lighter version. Please tell me. Okay, let's get back to the story, guys. As Bjorn's middle finger was raised up high, his mind was racing and worried as he wondered if Erwin had recognized the signal yet, because she's far away. Of course, the red hair man and his crew didn't know what this meant, and this confused them. While they were confused, Bjorn had no choice but to trust her. So he charged at his enemies with his shield. He rushed towards them, but their leader stopped him by slamming his sword against his shield. Feeling Bjorn's strength, he began to be undermined, so he called his samurai friend for help. While Bjorn was focused on him, the samurai came in swinging his sword, slashing at Bjorn's shield and pushed it out of the way. Bjorn could feel the power of the samurai warrior, but he knew that he couldn't back off. So he decided to be aggressive towards the samurai, but the samurai easily dodged his attacks. However, hitting them is not his original goal. He wants to distract them to make an opening for Erwin. In the midst of the fight, he couldn't help but worry about Erwin. He was worried that she might have been defeated by the crossbow guy. But as he fought, an arrow came flying from behind them. It surprised everyone because it was a crossbow arrow, and it was coming towards their leader. But it was blocked by the shield guy of their team. The shield guy told his squad to focus on Bjorn, and he would focus on blocking any of the arrows coming their way. Both of them rushed towards Bjorn. Bjorn stopped the attack of the red-haired guy with his shield, but he had no chance to fight against both at once. As the samurai guy ran towards him, ready for a killing blow, Bjorn knew what he had to sacrifice. So he protected his back with his left arm, though the poison had already made it useless for this fight. His arm had a huge cut on it now, but he exchanged it for the leader's head, slamming his shield into Red Hair's face and sending him flying. So it wasn't a bad trade-off. The samurai guy tried attacking Bjorn, but he dodged it. Then an arrow came flying towards the samurai, and he was shocked. But the shield guy came and blocked it. But he didn't know that the archer they were up against had a fire spirit on her side. Before Bjorn could do anything, another arrow came flying and pierced through the unshielded guy's shoulder. After seeing that things were not looking good for them, Red Hair decided to run off and go after Erwin. Bjorn wanted to go and stop him, but he knew he couldn't risk going after Red Hair, so he decided to trust Erwin to deal with him herself. He locked his feet into the ground and attacked the samurai guy with full force. But the samurai dodged it at a last moment. However, the samurai was not Bjorn's target from the start. He was aiming for the shield guy. Now, it was just Bjorn, and the samurai left standing. They clashed again, but Bjorn could see that the samurai was trying to buy time for Red Hair to come back, so he decided to finish it in one shot, even if it was dangerous. He pretended to swing his shield, but instead he threw it towards the samurai's head, hitting him hard. But if he missed, it would become dangerous for him. Now, he grabbed the samurai guy by his collar, and Bjorn knew that he didn't have much strength left and was about to die if he messed things up. So he lifted him up and pulled him towards his face and literally bit his tongue out of his neck. The barbarian rage had taken over, and he was moving off of pure instinct for survival. Now, both of Bjorn's opponents' bodies were on the ground, and he was left standing alone. Erwin came running to him from behind, tears in her eyes because she was worried about Bjorn's safety. She also killed both of her opponents, and now they had both survived the game of survival one more time. This time, it got a bit too close for comfort though. As Erwin saw how wounded Bjorn was, she handed him a potion, telling him to drink it immediately. Bjorn was confused because he didn't know that people can drink it. She told him it's better to drink it than to pour it on your wounds, and since he was poisoned, it would clean up his insides too. Bjorn chugged the vial of healing potion and dropped it on the ground as he sat there healing. He could feel his insides boiling, his entire body burning in pain, and his veins were itchy and hot. That's the reason why people pour it on the wound instead of drinking it, even if it has more benefits. While Bjorn was healing, Erwin was next to him, encouraging him. Then he asked her how much time was left. Erwin checked their watch and told him that it was 11:20, which meant that they had 40 minutes until the first floor closed. They did not have any time to rest despite the fight. Then Bjorn asked her to strip, and she had a regular reaction for her standard akos. She was thinking that he was doing it so suddenly, so he must have a reason for it, and she started taking her top off. Or I was just thinking too much. She is the same Erwin we know. Then Bjorn asked what she was doing and told her that he meant stripping the bodies of the dead guys for items and resources. But now that they had only 40 minutes, Bjorn decided to just take their equipment, magic crystals and backpacks. They didn't have time for other things. So Erwin went to get Red Hair and Crossbow Guy's things too. They had only 34 minutes left when Erwin came back with all the stuff. After that, they ran through the forest at top speed. There was only 1 minute left, but they got to the portal of the first floor, and then they jumped into the portal. They managed to come back to the first floor in time. Erwin rejoiced in their success. She had lots of fun. Meanwhile, Bjorn still wondered how she managed to land perfectly every time. She told Bjorn that he did a great job. Then he told her that she did a great job too. Then she leaned in close to Bjorn, asking him what he wanted to say earlier before. But there were less than 10 seconds left before the labyrinth closed. So he told her that they should talk once they were back in Raftonia, but they would both emerge at different locations. So they had to choose some spot for meeting, but Bjorn forgot the name of the tavern. There was no time left, and he was scratching his head in rage because he couldn't remember the name of the tavern. Finally, he remembered and told her to meet him at the Black Whale Tavern once they were out. She happily agreed to it, and their time together in the labyrinth ended. The labyrinth began to close, and he was being transported back to Raftonia. Bjorn emerged back in the city filled with explorers. Now the story is going to be more interesting, my horny friends. But for now, he was back in Raftonia amidst the hustle and bustle of people. It's a place filled with a tremendous amount of people because all the explorers are gathered in one place. But for now, he began to reset his clock because time in the labyrinth flows differently than in the city. No matter how many days you spent in the labyrinth, once you come back to the city, it's always noon on the next day. And you have to reset your clock so that it points to noon. I was curious about one thing. If no matter how many days you spent in the dungeon, you come out the next day and the higher the floor, the more days it takes to close, does it mean you age faster compared to the person outside? Or does the age of the person inside the dungeon not increase? Think the second option is more reasonable. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. Let's get back to the story. In the crowd, he saw a tall barbarian calling out to him, and he wondered what this guy's name was. As the two men shook hands, Dorn remembered his name as Vanon's second son, Karak, but he was actually the third son. Well, Dorn always does that. Then another one came, and he was glad to see both safe. This guy's name was Serum, and the name reminded me of something. What about? After that, within a moment, a crowd of barbarians gathered around, surrounding Vanon's second son, Karak, talking about their experience in the labyrinth. He sure was a popular guy, but Jorn didn't seem to be happy about it. They were having a whole reunion, but I didn't see Aner anywhere. Maybe we'll see her in the future. For now, one of the barbarians challenged Karak to a duel, and Karak accepted it, which was a celebratory barbarian thing. So they all decided to head out to the bravery checkpoint, where they could get their magic crystals counted, as well as talk some more and share their experiences as they walked away. They asked Bjorn if he was coming with them. It didn't really seem like he wanted to, but he obliged anyways, because what else could he do? At the register table, a lady was counting all of the magic crystals. Some had 20,000, some had 30,000, and at the end, Vanon's third son, Karak, stood above them all with 40,000 magic crystals. Everybody was cheering for him, calling him the warrior of warriors. Then Bjorn walked up to the register and dropped a bunch of bags on the counter. The cashier lady began to calculate. She was so fast that Bjorn was left shocked. After the count was done, it turned out that Bjorn had 182,413 magic crystals. Hearing the numbers, Bjorn was also in shock. After hearing that, they gathered around him and started cheering for him. They also noticed his equipment and bag and started saying that they were jealous of him and that he was a true warrior. All of them were truly happy for him. He was being lifted up and thrown in the air by a crowd of barbarians. And he enjoyed that moment. But people started to complain about it. So the squad decided to hang outside of the checkpoint while some of them stayed inside the building to get their magic crystals counted. As they sat on the steps, Jorn decided that he should follow all the other barbarians because there might be something left to do that he doesn't know about, and he doesn't want to take the risk of getting exposed. So he would wait for them to return and stick with them. In the distance, he saw a group of elves hanging out. In that group, he saw Erwin. She was talking to her friends about how she learned to control spirits, and they applauded her. Jorn felt envious because she hung out with that sort of crowd. But he was surrounded by the savages instead. He noticed that she looked at him and waved stealthily from afar, trying to hide her connection with him. He quietly told her to meet tonight, and she agreed. Then the elf lady asked Erwin if she knew him. She denied it immediately. Meanwhile, the same happened to Bjorn. Karag asked him if he knew the elf, but Bjorn said no. Of course, barbarians are free, spirited and loud, and this guy straight up shouted that there's no way a #1 warrior like him would hang out with those cowardly earheads. This pissed off Erwin's friends, and the mood became tense all of a sudden, but she didn't escalate the situation. Jorn was annoyed, but thankfully, the rest of the barbarians came out of the building. So Bjorn got up, telling the other barbarians that they should leave now that everyone's here. On the way, He noticed a child calling out to his father. The child ran up to his father and hugged him. They told each other that they missed one another. This was also a feature in the Dungeon in Stone game. Anyways, there were moments of joy once you came out of the labyrinth. People would meet their families and friends. However, there were also moments where people would die, and the repercussions of that could be felt. A woman cries to her husband's companion, begging him to tell her where he is. But the companion can say nothing because her husband had died. Another moment happens where a woman is crying as a little girl innocently asks her mother where her brother is. These moments of agony and sadness couldn't be felt throughout the 2D game graphics. But now, seeing it in real life, his feelings were in chaos. After some time, the barbarians raised their mugs to drink the night away, pouring liquor down their throats like true barbarians. Bjorn thought these guys were going to do something important, and he was worried he might miss a necessary step of sorts. But they were just trying to get drunk. He was angry looking at them, wasting his time. So he slammed his hand on the table and told them that he had somewhere else to be. Karak was shocked upon hearing this. The whole crowd became angry when they heard this. It looked as if they would kill him because he is the protagonist of the night and he is leaving. But they let him go happily while still calling him the best warrior. As he walked through the streets of Raftonia, he could hear the laughter and joy in people's voices. This place was peaceful, and he felt comfortable walking around. He thought that there were no monsters or humans that would harm him. As he looked around at stores, he felt the relaxation of being in a place that had rules and laws. In this place, even if he fell down on the ground, nothing would happen to him. Unlike the labyrinth, someone might even help him. Then he walked into a hotel to properly take a rest, then started thinking that this other world might be more barbaric than the 21st century Earth, but it was still peaceful. Then he got a room for himself so he could change and shower. All those near-death encounters in the labyrinth had made him realize that living in Raftonia might not be that bad. After he came out of the shower, feeling refreshed, and now all he wanted was a comfortable bed to sleep. But thoughts of his home were rushing through his mind. He still wanted to go home, even if there is no one to greet him at home. As nighttime approached, Bjorn woke at 9 at night, feeling fully refreshed and relaxed. He remembered that he came out of the labyrinth at noon, so he must have slept around 4 to 5 hours. It was now time to go meet Erwin at the Black Whale Tavern. But an old man told him that the Black Whale Tavern was sold off 10 years ago. Bjorn was shocked to hear this. Then the old man got more into detail. Apparently, the son of the original owner got into gambling addiction, ending up costing him the tavern, so the name and the owner both changed. Bjorn kind of expected it, but the game's version of Raftonia must have been years behind this one. Then he asked the old man the new name for the tavern. The old man told him the new name. The tavern was now called Python Path, and Bjorn had arrived at the place ready to meet Erwin. After seeing it, he wondered that the Black Whale Tavern used to look much different from this place in the game. He was glad that at least he can read this world's language, so he had to go to the library to fill his missing knowledge of this world. Then he entered, and this place was filled with people going wild. He immediately started looking around for Erwin, but she found him before he could. She called him over by waving her hand and saying his name. However, he noticed the elf lady from earlier was also there. The short-haired woman stared at him angrily, saying that he is the barbarian from earlier. He introduced himself as Jandal's son, Bjorn, and asked her who she was. She said she's the older sister of Erwin. Then Bjorn said that her name couldn't be older sister, so she just told him to call her Teresa. Then he remembered that Erwin's last name was Teresa, so this lady was trying to keep her real name hidden. He asked her reason why she was there. Then she stood up and slammed her hand on the table. She asked Bjorn why he called Erwin to such an inappropriate tavern like this last night, and then stood her up, making her stay the night out. And now he is asking what her purpose here is. She insults him, calling him a thick-skinned barbarian. Then Bjorn asks her what she means by it. Then she replied and said, "Are you trying to play dumb?" After hearing that, he got confused and asked Erwin how much time it has been since they got out from the labyrinth. She answers him that it had been 30 hours. Bjorn was feeling like an idiot right now. First, he thought it had been 4 to 5 hours. But nope, it had been a whole 30 hours. He realized the reason why he felt so refreshed after waking up. It was because he slept over a day. Seeing Erwin, he was feeling sorry, so he apologized and told them that he overslept. After hearing that, both of them were shocked, especially Erwin's sister, to see a barbarian apologizing. After that, in shock and embarrassment, she asks Bjorn why he would call Erwin. Bjorn could have given many long reasons, but he said he had no obligation to answer her. She can ask Erwin if she wants and piss her off again. She says he is just a beginner, and then Bjorn replies that she should throw away that kind of attitude unless she intends on taking care of Erwin all her life. Then she calls him a savage and slams a huge bag of 350,000 magic stones on the table. After seeing it, he feels like he is in K-dramas. Bjorn just stared at the stones, and this made Erwin's sister wonder why he wasn't taking it. She knew that he had a different reason for asking Erwin to meet. Does she think Bjorn is Johnny Bro or something who accepts any types of payments? Bjorn looked at Erwin and asked her if she agrees with her, but she doesn't know what to say. At least for a moment. However, Bjorn tells her that the deal for giving her the essences was that she'd help until he got the amount he wanted. After hearing that, Erwin was a little disappointed. Then Bjorn told her that they would also split the rewards 50-50. Erwin was overjoyed at first, but suddenly she realized something and asked for Bjorn's forgiveness because she wouldn't be able to go labyrinth exploring with him anymore. This made Bjorn wonder and puzzled because he thought that they were a really good and pretty compatible duo. Then her sister explained that she comes and explores the labyrinth with her from now on. She said that they were just following tradition and letting her go alone since it was her first time. However, she never intended on letting Erwin explore the labyrinth on her own. Bjorn now realized that she already had someone to accompany her through the labyrinth, and he was jealous of people with personal connections. Then she pushed the bag further towards him and said that if he understood, he should just take this pouch. But Bjorn stopped her and said that it was a result of splitting the essences in half. She responded that this was indeed because it's the loot they got together. But according to Bjorn, the bag was still lacking 280,000 stones because the promised share was 9-1. She smirked and slammed another bag with the remaining 280,000 stones on the table. He realized that this woman just tried to con him, and he kind of gets why the barbarians hated elves now. He immediately told her to get out if she is done here, so that he and Erwin can get on with the remaining private matters they needed to talk about. Of course, she wasn't going to move, but Erwin poked her on the elbow and told her that while she appreciated her coming here with her, she should go now. She wanted to thank Bjorn and say her goodbyes. This was one of those weird moments when you realize your younger sibling isn't a child anymore. However, she retaliated, pointing her finger at Bjorn and asking him to swear that he won't sleep with Erwin. If he agrees to swear, she will leave immediately. Erwin was embarrassed and shocked that she would say that out loud. Meanwhile, Bjorn wondered if that meant that all the other options were still on. She told him to swear. It didn't mean anything to him, but he swore on his warrior's honor. But Erwin looked most disappointed. After that, she decided to leave, but she still had something else to say to Bjorn. She turned around, thanked him for saving Erwin and keeping her safe in the labyrinth. Erwin slammed her head on the table in embarrassment and was worried that she might have upset her sister. She had never spoken up for herself like this before, and if she was mad at her now. Bjorn told her that she didn't look angry because she was smiling and told her not to worry about it. Erwin remembered and apologized to him that they won't be able to be a team again because she had made up her mind to work with her sister a long time ago. He told her that she didn't need to apologize. Bjorn was a considerate and rational guy. Even he wouldn't have rejected the offer either if some high-level elf offered to carry him. Then Erwin pulled out another bag of 63,000 magic crystals. These were from the loot that they got from the redhead and the crossbow guy. and she had already taken her share, so this was all that was left for him. She also told him that she left the 2 backpacks that she took off at her place, and there were a bunch of things there. So she invited him to take a look for himself tomorrow. Jorn was surprised that she knows what he wanted to ask without him mentioning anything, but he was disappointed that he already had to give her up as his teammate. Then Erwin asked the last question, and she asked him how she should repay him. He was confused. Then she explained that she had told him that she would repay him for helping her. This is the reason why her sister made him swear that he wouldn't sleep with her. For a moment, Johnny Bro took him over. However, he just told her that he couldn't think of anything at the moment and then asked her if she wanted to eat anything. She told him that she wasn't hungry, so he decided that he would just order for himself because he was starving. This brought an idea to Erwin's mind. She said that she wanted alcohol. She hadn't taken a sip of alcohol yesterday because she wanted to drink the first return drink with him and truly celebrate with him. Jorn remembered that return drinks were a culture in the game, especially for elves who only lived in their shrines until they were adults and put huge importance on the first return drink. He said that he was glad, but Erwin leaned in closer and told him that he's supposed to say thank you, and he said thanks to her. Erwin was happy. She told him that they went through so much together in the labyrinth, so it was a given that they share their first return drink with each other. She said that this is probably not his first return drink, though. But he says that it was actually the first time he was going to have a return drink. She was surprised to know that he was serious when he told her that he was only 20 years old, which is the same age as her. She had initially thought that he might just be joking. He told her that it was his first time in the labyrinth as well. They start celebrating, and as they're celebrating, Erwin tells Bjorn that he did a great job. Then he tells her that she was great too. The two raised their mugs and slammed their mugs together in a toast. After a bit, their mugs were empty and their food was done. Erwin said that Bjorn was wearing a shirt today as she looked at him, and Bjorn only said in his mind that she was wearing a skirt today. Bjorn took a big sip of rum and decided that it was time for him to talk about the more important stuff now. Meanwhile, Erwin just kept admiring his ability to drink. He asked her if she still wanted to repay him, because he has thought of a way. She asked him what it was, but he said he couldn't tell her here, because he feared that the security would come after them. She blushed and looked at him and asked him if they should head up to his room. After they went to the Bjorn room, outside of Bjorn's door, moaning of a woman can be heard from inside. Inside, Bjorn told her to spread wider. He was sweating as he tried hard. As she moaned and screamed louder and said to let it go, he was just scratching her shoulder to check her stats effects. But Erwin screamed out loud from the pain, telling him that he was going to dislocate her shoulder because it had never gone that far back before. He still wanted to make sure though, and asked her if she was sure this was the breaking point. She swore on her family, crying and screaming, so he let her go and told her to rest for a bit. When he let her go, she was in complete shock at being alive. She thought she would lose her arm and life from all that. She looked annoyed and disappointed. She wanted to know if he asked her to come to his room just so he could check her abilities and stats. Then he said that ability use wasn't allowed within the city, and he really wanted to check the difference in her body after the essence. But in reality, he wanted to check the difference between the game and real life. He did this because Dungeon and Stone was not a user-friendly game. There were 3 main stats: body, mind, and ability stats. However, there was a plus icon on the side of each of the main stats. And when you press it, there are thousands of detailed stats. For example, if stamina were to increase, you could carry heavier items and perform better in physical attacks. This was the reason that different characters were capable of different things, despite the numbers of their stats being the same. Bjorn has come to learn of this because he practically put his whole life into the game. But there were still stats that had effects he still did not know about. Erwin was hoping and asking if there is something else they are going to do. Meanwhile, Bjorn was there wondering about the obsession stat that came with the essence Erwin ate. He doesn't know much about it except that it was a low-ranking stat in the mind stat, and that's all he knew about it. So he asked her if she felt a change in her mindset after she left the labyrinth. Did she start overthinking about something or having patience issues? He needed to know more. She wasn't sure. Still, She remembered that she had a desire for cookies right as soon as she came out of the labyrinth. She did not like them before, but she ate a bunch of them when she came back. He wondered if the obsession stat increased desire, which is probably a given. There were still other stats he didn't know about, so he had to take it into consideration when choosing the essence. Maybe this is the reason why she is so horny for Bjorn, because of the obsession stat. As he was thinking, the horny elf pulled his shirt and said she was sleepy. There were still things he wanted to check, but he couldn't anymore, so they decided to sleep, putting out all the candles in the room. Bjorn closed his eyes, ready to relax. In that moment, he remembered something he had sworn on. As Erwin slept leaning on his chest, he remembered that her sister had made him swear not to sleep with her, but he said to himself that she probably meant the other kind of sleeping together. They got up early in the morning and had brought all of the loot back to Bjorn's inn. Erwin asked Bjorn if he was going to sell everything. Bjorn told her that he was going to sell most of it, except for a few items. Erwin had her eye on a piece of gear, a leather outfit, and a belt. She asked him if she could have it. He told her that she can have it if she subtracts its cost from her share, and she agreed. Later on, they went to a merchant shop where they sold all of the extra equipment for a good amount of money. The sword was sold for 350,000 stones. Later, Bjorn sold some more stuff for 180,000 stones. Then they sold the backpacks, which went for a whopping 250,000 stones. After a few more visits to different shops and merchants, they had a solid amount of money in their hands. The bags of money had piled up, and they had earned a total of 1,450,000 stones. As they held the bags of money in their hands, Erwin was shocked after seeing that much money, but she earned just change compared to Bjorn. He really is a heartless man. Bjorn gets almost 1.4 million stones after subtracting Erwin's share because he also killed a man alone before meeting her. He had never made this much money in the game's start before. This was a nice start for him. They walked out into the street. Bjorn told her that this is where they should part. This surprised Erwin. Then he wondered why she was surprised, because they had already decided to go their separate ways. He told her that they're taking the same route, so they should walk to the central square together. Even though she agreed to it, she really wanted to spend more time with him. As they walked up to the town square, they saw a huge crowd of people standing around a guillotine blade. Bjorn and Erwin walked up there. A guard screamed out loud, stating that there was an execution happening and that everyone should back off. A man was forced into the guillotine, his head and hands poking out as his face sealed up with bandages. These people hadn't committed any serious crimes. Their only crime was that they hadn't been able to pay the taxes. The execution began, and the guard pulled at the rope. Rafdonia was the final remaining city of the other world that ended at the hands of a witch's curse. The only place to get resources in this limited space was the labyrinth. Therefore, those who couldn't pay taxes were executed to decrease the number of mouths to feed. As the blood hit the pavement from those who were executed, a bunch of people came running and holding pieces of bread. They dipped their bread in the blood and started eating it. Erwin was barely holding herself from throwing up, asking Bjorn why they were dipping bread into the blood. He told her that there's a legend that everyone who drinks the blood of the executed will gain great financial luck. Bjorn asked Erwin how much the taxes were for the first year. She told him that it's 700,000 stones for non-humans. He realized that it was a bit off from the game, but similar. He asked her what it is from the second year and afterwards. She told him that it was 800,000 stones, and they were exchanging fees too. This was the same number as the game. As they stood there, looking at them devour the bread with blood sauce, Bjorn started thinking about tax rise each year of work. And if he can't get back to his real life, and if he can't compete with the increasing taxes, his blood might be the one that people are dipping their bread into. And to avoid that, he has to save money. And for that, he needs to become an explorer that can at least reach the 6th floor. The scene switches to the library. As he walked in, he wondered why people were staring at him because he was a barbarian in the library. Then he saw Einar using a book in the library as a pillow and sleeping. Well, it's good that she's okay, because we didn't see her after he came out with the other barbarians. He walked up to her and poked her, wondering why she was there. She woke up, saliva drooling down her face as she looked at him. Bjorn looked at her and said that he was glad to see she was doing fine. She gave him a smile, telling him that she feels the same. He told her to lower her voice because they were in a library. She answered that she never expected to see her fellow barbarian here. Bjorn asked her what she was doing here. She told him that she was here because of what he said to her earlier. He told her that she should think before acting, and she wanted to gather more knowledge in order to think properly. Bjorn was surprised because she is different from the rest. She tells him that while she was in the labyrinth, she realized that the monsters weren't the only enemies they had to encounter. As she's speaking, Bjorn thinks about how if there was any regular barbarian in her place, they would be bragging about their experience. Instead, she said that this is why she decided to study, but she found reading to be very, very difficult for her. So she wanted to learn how to read and write properly, and she was thinking of going to their shrine so she could learn all that from the elders. He asked her if she was going right now, and she said that if she doesn't, she would forget about it. As she's walking, she remembers that she promised to repay him for his advice if they came back alive from the labyrinth. She told him that if he ever needed anything, all he had to do was ask her at the Angry Bull Tavern. He looked at her and said that he would definitely come to her if he needed. He was simultaneously hoping that she doesn't forget about this promise in a couple of days, because he was probably going to need her help very soon. Anyways, he needed to find a book, and he didn't know how to do that in a place this big. His eyes went straight towards a girl sitting at the front desk, which is the librarian. He walked up to her as she slept on the job. He tried speaking to her, and the girl woke up while raising her head. She looked at him and asked him what he needed. He tells her that he's looking for a book, one that is related to history, but she interrupts him and casts some spells, conjuring up a weird ball of light that starts floating towards Bjorn. He's confused about what magic she cast. Then the ball of light shimmers its way into his chest. Bjorn is unsure of what changed because he doesn't feel any different. The librarian tells him that now he can find any book that he's looking for in the library. She also tells him that he's allowed to borrow any book, but he has to put it back where he takes it from. Bjorn tries to ask for details about the magic, but the librarian already becomes the Sleeping Beauty. After that, he walks around in the library. He quickly realizes how the magic works. It's quite simple. All he has to do is walk around, and the book he wants to read would shine. Now he understands why there's only one librarian in a library this big, and she still has time to sleep. After that, he starts reading books. The first book, titled The Fallen World, talks about the history from thousands of years ago, where no living beings could live due to a witch's curse, and the last remaining fortress, Rafdonia, was the only place that managed to avoid the disaster. The royal family opened up a dimension for the people who were starving to death because of limited resources. That became the labyrinth. This was similar to the game's prologue. He already knows it. Then the second book he read was Alchemy's Basics. It talks about how magic crystals from monsters can be made into bread, water, steel, and such. They are literally changing the atomic structure. Isn't it too much? Well, it was also too much for Bjorn to understand the theory, so he just memorized it for now. After that, the next book was Is Sacred War 3. It talks about how the barbarians and the elves come to hate each other. The fourth book he really wants to read about was The Evil Spirits of the Abyss. The evil spirits refer to those people who had come from different dimensions and had possessed other people's bodies. This was technically correct, but it doesn't describe why it happens. It's clear that the temples and the royal family had tried their hardest to get rid of this phenomenon. Well, what I think is that someone from the royal family is also one of the people from Earth, like Earth. And then he made it public to get rid of any competition. Well, it's just my theory. He learned one thing from it, And that is, as long as he didn't say any of the forbidden words, he would be pretty much okay. The fifth book, titled On the Death of the King, is about the first ever king, also called the Immortal King, Lavagin III. It talks about how he died over 150 years ago. Basically, he lived for thousands of years. Since he was the first king, and I think it's also related to evil spirits and my theory, the game's story started after his death. So that means Bjorn was 150 years after the game timeline. This is why his knowledge of the game world kept contradicting the reality in this world. Previously, I think I said it was a 10-year gap, but it was actually a 150-year gap. After that, he moved on to the book about the dimension's instability of observation records. While reading this book, Bjorn had a realization that this might be the book that the blondie who had saved him had read. This book mentions a theory that says entering a portal in the moment that it was closing could have something to do with that instability. Perhaps that is why that happened to him. That made him feel depressing because he had no one else to blame but himself for the torture he had to go through. It had gotten dark outside, so he decided to read the rest later. After that, he goes back to his room and thinks about how it had been 3 whole days since he had left the labyrinth. The labyrinth opens up on every first day of the month at exactly midnight. So he has 27 days left to prepare himself, and he has to find a new member for his party from tomorrow onwards.